Hey, what's up gamers? As you might have noticed on this channel, I regularly want to discuss games that often fly under the radar. These are fairly big titles that either didn't get the attention they deserve or might have been skipped by some player. We've got 10 games here that in my opinion deserve a second look. But please let me know in comments if you agree with this list and if you would add some other games to it. But right now, let's start this topic. At the beginning of the list we've got Immortals Fenyx Rising, released at the end of 2020. It got somewhat overshadowed by a flood of bigger releases, and after its launch, Ubisoft seemed to lose interest in it. There were talks of a sequel, but that's now been scrapped, which is a shame because Immortal Fenyx Rising was a fun, light-hearted take on Greek mythology. It felt like a nice contrast to the usual Ubisoft formula of huge maps and endless checklists. It had an open world, sure, but it focused more on quality than quantity. There were environmental puzzles, satisfying combat, and a cartoony tone that was refreshing. It had a Breath of the Wild meets Assassin's Creed Odyssey vibe, which turned out to be a surprisingly fun mix. Not perfect, but definitely an enjoyable experience that stands out from the typical Ubisoft fare. Number 9 is Call of Juarez, Gunslinger. This entry from the Call of Juarez series kind of came out of nowhere, considering the franchise wasn't exactly beloved, but Gunslinger ended up being a tight arcade first-person shooter that really embraced the Wild West theme in a way we hadn't seen before. Made by Techland, the studio behind Dying Light, the game offers sharp first-person action with a good amount of grit. It's overwhelmingly positive on Steam and it's just good, straightforward fun. If you like first-person shooters and are looking for something a little different, give this one a try. At number 8, the list continues with Star Wars Squadrons, which doesn't seem to come up much in conversations about recent Star Wars games. Sure, there have been some great ones recently with Star Wars Jedi games leading the charge, but Squadrons is often forgotten. This game scratched the itch for a lot of classic Star Wars fans who had been waiting for an X-Wings vs TIE Fighter style dogfighting experience for years. Squadrons delivered that old school aerial combat but updated for modern times. Maybe it didn't get as much attention because it was mainly in first-person cockpit view, but the feel of the combat, the sense of control, and the sheer Star Wars-ness of it all was spot on. There's also a full campaign, although not super long, with some interesting ideas and cameos, and a solid multiplayer mode. Plus, it even supported VR, which made you feel like you were truly in the cockpit of an X-Wing or TIE fighter. It wasn't even full priced at launch, and yet many seem to have missed out. Developed by EA Motive, who also worked on the Dead Space remake, it's definitely worth a shot if you passed on it. Now at number 7, let's touch on the more recent Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon games. I've been around since the original Ghost Recon, so I'm a bit of a purist, but we have to acknowledge that despite middling reviews, games like Ghost Recon Wildlands and Ghost Recon Breakpoint build up dedicated fan bases. Wildlands in particular took a while to get there, but over time, with updates and tweaks, it became a great co-op experience. Breakpoint, though rougher around the edges, still found a niche audience. Some fans, with the help of mods and realistic gameplay settings, have kept the game alive and kicking. If you're curious, GameSpot even did a good deep dive on this. While I'm not personally invested in these newer entries, I do know people who have had a blast with them, which is worth mentioning. Games like these sometimes get picked up by communities later and evolve into something special after launch, and these Ghost Recon games are prime example of that. Moving to number 6, we have Kena, Bridge of Spirits. Released in September 2021, it earned good reviews and people seemed to enjoy it, but it didn't really stay in the Game of the Year discussions, nor did it make a lasting impression in the action-adventure genre. That's surprising because games like this are rare nowadays. Kena is visually stunning with a charming world, some fun puzzles and surprisingly tough combat. The bosses, especially towards the end, end were no joke. Despite its Pixar-like art style, the challenge was real. It's unfortunate that we haven't seen a sequel yet, but there's certainly potential to improve upon what's here and expand this beautiful world even more. The developers mentioned that Sony was happy with the sales, but for some reason the game just didn't stick in people's minds. It's one of those hidden gems that is worth playing if you missed it. Now at number 5 we have A Way Out, from the studio that brought you It Takes Two. This earlier co-op game really leaned into cooperative gameplay. You and a friend take on the roles of two prisoners attempting to break out, and the game mixes a lot of genres of mechanics. 1 minute you're sneaking around guards, and the next you're involved in high-speed chases or shutouts. The pacing is great, and the way the game encourages you to work together is just awesome. The story is compelling with a memorable ending and its best experience side by side with a friend. It's been a few years since its release, but if you haven't played this yet, it's definitely one of the best co-op experiences out there. Coming in at number 4 is Astral Chain, released in 2019. This Switch exclusive from Platinum Games didn't get the recognition it deserved. It's a stylish action game with fast-paced combat overseen by some key developers from Nier and Devil May Cry. In this game you're a rookie police officer fighting alongside these ghostly creatures in a futuristic world. It's got a fun mix of button mashy combat, crime solving and over-the-top sci-fi action that fans of Platinum Games will love. At number 3 we have Alien Isolation. It's one of the few games that truly captured the spirit of the Alien franchise, specifically the horror and tension of the original 1979 film. It's a survival horror game set 15 years after the events of Alien, where you play as Ellen Ripley's daughter, Amanda. This game is tense, challenging and downright terrifying at times. Yes, there are some pacing issues later in the game, but overall it's an excellent survival horror experience that really nails the atmosphere of the Alien universe. At number 2 we've got Titanfall 2. This is a game that, despite its immense quality, didn't receive the widespread attention it deserved at launch, mostly due to its unfortunate release timing between Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. However, over the years it's gained a strong following, and for good reason. The single-player campaign is one of the best first-person shooter experiences you'll ever play, with inventive level design, great pacing and a touching story about the bond between a pilot and their Titan. On the top of that, the multiplayer is fast-paced, sleek and incredibly satisfying, combining parkour movement with mech combat in a way that feels unique. If you haven't played it, now is the time. Despite its initial underperformance, it's still one of the best FPS games out there. And finally, at number 1 we have my very favorite, Sleeping Dogs. Originally released in 2012, this open-world action-adventure game from United Front Games has become something of a cult classic. It's set in a beautifully crafted version of Hong Kong and follows an undercover cop, Wei Shen, as he infiltrates the worlds of organized crime. The game blends martial arts combat, gunplay and driving in a seamless way, and the story, filled with twists, is gripping from start to finish. Although it never reached the same level of recognition as other open worlds games like GTA or Saints Row, Sleeping Dogs offers a distinct experience that stands out thanks to its unique setting and combat mechanic. If you missed this one, it's definitely worth revisiting, especially if you enjoy crime dramas and action-packed gameplay. So all those games really deserve a second chance, and I know the list could continue for a very long time, so let me know in comment what game is not on this list but deserves to be. Some of these may have slipped under the radar or been overshadowed by bigger releases, but they're all well worth your time. If you've played any of these or are planning to, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching and see you next time. Happy gaming everyone, bye bye.